Welcome to ForexTV.com. Today is Monday, October 6th. I'm Kathleen Reddington with your New York Forex Market Buzz. The yen is making big gains on the majors and the dollar is higher against the euro. Now for a look at the latest headlines from the CEP News Desk. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tumbled more than 300 points and is trading below 10,000. Global economic worries and signs of the crisis spreading to Europe caused a widespread sell-off. The last time the Dow traded below 10,000 was in October of 2004. European officials are working furiously to stem the bleeding financial system. Germany announced that it plans to insure all private deposit accounts while injecting additional funds into hypo real estate, and the Belgian government selling some of Fortis's assets to BNP Paribas. In a bid to reestablish credit markets and buoy the economy, the Fed announced this morning that it will be increasing the size of term facility auctions and that it will begin paying interest on required and excess bank reserves. The Federal Reserve also announced that it will expand the 28-day and the 84-day auction funds to $150 billion each. The value of building permits issued by Canadian municipalities plunged 13.5% for August to 5.6 billion Canadian dollars. Non-residential permits were down 19.3%. Permits for new housing dropped 9.3%. Analysts had expected a 1.5% decline in total permits during August. Today we are joined by Nick Bennenbroek of Wells Fargo. Hi Nick, how are you?
Good afternoon. Glad to be here.
All right, today we've seen the yen make pretty big gains against the sterling and is gaining the most on the euro since the euro's inception. What's the story with the yen, and what is your strategy for the yen going forward?
Well, I think the key theme for markets and for the yen today is the fact that the markets remain incredibly volatile, and even with the rescue package being passed Friday, we're still seeing very large declines in equity markets and strains in the money markets. So that's helping to keep the yen supported, and I would suggest that we're probably going to see some further gains from here. So we'd be looking to buy the yen, at least on a very short-term basis.
All right, now Europe is going crazy trying to save banks and liquidity, and stock markets across the pond were in negative territory from their start. And so far, we've seen the euro drop against the yen and the dollar. What does all this mean for the euro?
That's a very good question, and we certainly have some issues about how quickly the euro has fallen, but the kind of financial difficulties that we've seen here in the United States have now clearly shown up across the Atlantic in Europe. Fundamentally, we do think that the negative effects of the financial sector on the European economy will see that currency continue to decline. There is probably, in the very short term, some potential for a short-term relief rally on the euro. It's an incredibly volatile situation. I would say the best strategy is just to, if we do get any rallies in the euro, to sell into those.
All right, seemingly the U.S. is in as much trouble as Europe. What is your strategy for the dollar moving forward? Is it just less bad news?
I think it's a case of less bad news, although the payrolls on Friday certainly weren't great, with 159,000 loss of jobs for the month of September. One of the things that one could say about the US is that the policymakers have been active for some time in terms of both various funding proposals, rate cuts, and now the rescue package that was announced on Friday. So hopefully that would set the scene for an eventual recovery in the US economy, although it is probably some way off. Certainly one of the key impacts of the financial crisis has been a shortage of dollars, and that's kept the dollar well bid. So we would think that as a general strategy, staying long the dollar or looking to add to new dollar positions is a good idea.
Okay, and people in the U.S. are looking for a rate cut from the Fed, perhaps even sooner than their October meeting. Would a rate cut help or hurt at this point?
Well, I don't think it can hurt. It's questionable whether it would or how much it would help, given the significant strains that we're seeing in the money markets. But our view here at Wells Fargo is that if we continue to see the kind of strains that we're seeing in terms of the very large equity declines that we're seeing today, in terms of the very high short-term money market rates, we could easily see a rate cut from the Federal Reserve by the end of this week.
And we saw the Canadian dollar fall to some of its lowest levels based on oil, despite a higher PMI reading today. And with oil slipping below $90 during the day today, is oil really going to break the Canadian dollar going forward?
I think the overall trend for the Canadian dollar is probably lower. Again, it's a question of speed and timing, and there is potential for perhaps some short-term Canadian dollar rally. But certainly, at its core, the kind of problems that we're seeing in financial markets here and the availability of credit is not good for growth and not good for commodities, and I think that means that currencies like Canada and also Australian and New Zealand dollars probably under some pressure over the coming months ahead.
And speaking about that Australian dollar, it had some huge falls today, and the RBA is expected to make an announcement about interest rates later this evening. What is your strategy for the Aussie?
Well, yes, and most of the expectations and our own expectation would be for a 50 basis point reduction in that cash rate for Australia down to 6.5%. Given that we've already seen such a dramatic fall, it's not clear that that's going to cause the Australian currency to go down much further. Again, it's similar to many other currencies. We do think that to the extent that you get any rally or any strengthening in the Australian dollar, the fundamentals do suggest weakness over time, so we would sell into that strength.
All right, thanks for joining us, Nick.
You're welcome.
This has been your New York Forex Market Buzz with Nick Bennenbroek of Wells Fargo. I'm Kathleen Reddington. Join us later this afternoon, 4 p.m. exchange, right here on ForexTV.com.